A line on a page starts a drawing. Words on the page assemble into a line of text. Line, same word, different meaning. This is an experiment building both kinds of lines at once, testing language to mimic the gesture and sketch of drawing. My materials are 5 lines of text, each following a visual line, this against the ocean. The lines are built of their images and superimposed atop the tangled texture of the sea and the rays of thought that stem from inquiry, along with the trail of the essay, yes, fairy tale, as I puzzle out the process. I'm tracing and drawing these lines with the hope that I might make a map, one that unveils a hidden topography within. My materials, my 5 lines are a jag of sunlight, the grid of a tile floor, a fringe of fabric, the start of a still life painting, and the edge of the body. Each one hones to a memory and to another piece in this portfolio. Around us are lines of the canyons and mountains and forests and clouds and the sea. I cannot begin with my own lines of thought before including something of the natural world to hold it all. For this drawing/narrative, I pick one natural wonder. The majestic ocean will be our background, the texture beneath us, humming, connecting. The sea will be the place we come back to in search of our place. Each time I come to the foot of the ocean, I lose my breath. Just for a moment, seeing the sea takes the wind out of me, and I often feel displaced as I try to adjust to its enormity. And, of course, at the same time, I love the ocean and the shoreline. The whole experience of being here is something I crave. It is both so familiar and also so inconceivable. I find I yearn for it, and it is hard to take in, that vastness, that depth. In a sense, what the eyes see, they absorb into comprehension. But I find it impossible to absorb all that water. I respond with both push and pull, this thirst for something impossible to drink. When we try to draw the ocean, what we attempt to replicate is its skin, like the skin of boiled milk on a pudding. The texture of the water where it meets the air, the sprawling tapestry of its surface, a glinting weave of light and shadow, the tracings of the wind. Still, but endlessly undulating, flat, but deeper than we can hold in the mind, and always moving, a recognized pattern repeated over and over. A body of water, we call it, a body, hammocked tight to the arch of the earth, tacked between the coastal edges of continents. It has a shape, held together by hydrophilia, a love of itself. When I try to depict the textured weave of tiny waves and tufts of white, I get mired in the enormity, and in the subtlety, and in the layering and wavering, and I get lost. I grow impatiently unfaithful to its delicate realism, and I falsify in irregular regularity. It's unconvincing. Instead of drawing water from land, I end up swimming. Have you ever tried to draw the ocean? To place your finger on the weave of one of 1,000 waves and try to recreate them on paper? There's an artist who does it really well, Via Selmans. She's etches and draws images of the sea with an exacting realism. In her Ocean Surfaces series, Selmans resurrects the wavering immensity of the ocean into two-dimensional art. She distills liquid volume into line in scratch marks on an etching plate, graphite on paper, ink, and paint. She compresses the brine and heave of the sea into a window you can see it through. There it is, a square of the ocean, like a recipe dog-eared in a cookbook, preserved for your memory, its taste on your tongue. Salt sweat, brine, sea hurl, foam, the tang of sour fish, the grit of metallic sand. I'm sketching here a sense of the sea. Here's the horizon line and the tide lines washing up in layers, a new one each breath. And the body within it, ridges of toes against the sand, long stroke of leg against blue, crescent of head, ear to ear. And within that silhouette, incubate the 5 lines of this piece. A line of sunlight breaking through the clouds like a ripped stage curtain, a jagged slant of blinding gold. A child squatting on a blue tile floor, her finger tracing the white squares of grout, her outstretched reach, armpit to index finger to the gutter of the tile. A teenage girl peering down her shirt to this new cleavage, the seagull wing-shaped lace of her mother's stolen bra, wondering, does this make her a woman? The curve that mimics the rounded mounds of apricots, snug in a wooden bowl, atop pleats of gray velvet. The line of my legs, extending from the chair as I write this, my toes seeking placement among the zigzag pattern of the rug. Let's look at a line. What is a line, really? The edge of an object or a shadow? A mark, a scratch, a curve? A line is what separates one color, one thing, one being from another. There are so many lines around us, lines that separate us and lines that define us. When I'm talking about lines, I'm talking about intimacy. I'm talking about you and me and all the lines between us. Come closer. May I trace the line of your face? If you consent to be in this essay and lend your line, read on. If not, skip to the next chapter. Come here. Feel my finger at the center point of your hairline. Now down your forehead, over the ridge of your nose, through the divot above your mouth, the ins and outs of your lips, center line of the chin, down your neck to just below the cleft of your collarbone. There, a line. That's all it is. This, the line of your face, burning at the tip of my finger. This is your line, lifted from your profile, and we are bringing it into the drawing to be included among all the other lines, because you are in this essay too. Your fingerprints are all over the pages. Your breath brushes against these letters. There is this line of you falling like a loose hair across the page. Let's imagine it together, your line suspended in the air, your quivering silhouette. We're taking it with us while we explore building a drawing together. Line 1. Here we are, in the car, my hand on the gear shift, your hands in your lap, and together we are driving a ribbon of highway through blonde fields of wheat, the mountains a ragged scrap of blue, the sky thickly violet. Everything is purple and yellow and bruised, so strange, so vivid, saturated with color like in a dream. Your face, a shape outlined against the window. Beyond it, the blue ridge. Your green sweater, your fingers on the dial of the radio. We are watching the sky, pregnant with water, this odd swollen look it has, a blister pressed to the heat of the sun. And then it happens. The fabric of the sky rips. Light breaks through the heavy velvet in one vivid burst of gold. This crack of radiance hovering before us. Rainfall, light, the glory of downpour and sunburst at once. Obscurity and luminescence. The rain heaves onto the fields, dousing them while still they burn gold. We've never seen such color, such dual darkness and brilliance at the same time. Large plops of rain splatter the windshield, and the wipers surge on, a syncopation to our awe and silence, the grip of our hands. We witnessed this miracle, alone on this black stripe of asphalt in the wheat fields. Are you with me? Then the clouds shift and merge back together. The sky softens, the strangeness and magic melt away, and we are stumbling the highway, numbly rumbling between the thick white and yellow stripes of the black-soaked road. We've lost our line. But there, across the valley at the mountain ridge, is a line. It curves over the crests of hills, lit against the deep blue of the sky and the gray haze of mist. You trace it with your fingertip on the window. And as you tip your head down, I see the line and your profile kiss, a mirror image like an etching plate and the paper print it makes. Let's lift this line and keep it. Play with it on paper, in ink, graphite, and paint. I want to sketch it, and beyond that, I want to translate the gesture of it into music. I wonder what this part of you would sound like transformed this way. Small and short, a brief creak of a tree in the wind, or a quick snippet of the groan of a whale. I want to turn the line into dance, to take it, follow it, and recompose it within a body. I want to see it churn into movement, to run into the leg, to lift and whirl the arms overhead and then stop. Do you understand that this is you? Do you see yourself in this beautiful and oh so simple composition? Do you see yourself in these lines? If you will, stay with me here, drawing lines, pulling them from their associations, each one a thread of a memory that builds into a story. Line 2. Lines of white grout separate blue square tiles. In the shadow of the countertop under the sink, a little girl squats, Her finger paused at the farthest line she can reach on the tile floor. No one else can see her. The tiny tip of her finger follows the white lines, zig-zagging between the blocks of blue. You recognize her. We've seen her before. A prickly feeling creeps up her legs. Her feet have gone numb. If she shifts position, she might make some noise and get noticed, but worse, she would betray the laws of her line. It requires her stillness. Her finger is only allowed to go as long as she can reach without moving. She feels the stretch in her armpit, a thin burn. Every part of the line she has touched so far is brighter. Is it the dirt scrubbed off, or is it her touch? The lines around her illuminate a geometric web, a city scribbled on a chalkboard, a raft she could float away on. This is how we read lines on a page and assemble them in our minds into language, itself a tiny architecture of lines, a little city built on sound and meaning. Capital I, me, a self turned into a straight line, the same line as the spine of a book and the edge of a page mid-turn, the line between our understanding, a thin scrim of something between us where we walk together on this bridge of language. The artist Julie Meritou builds vast and complex drawings, paintings, and installations through layers and layers of line. She constructs these linear abundances with elements of architecture and landscape, gestural sweeps, and repetitive marks akin to language. Her work doesn't claim a traditional space the way a realist's landscape does, but rather we, the viewer, are taken into a grid of space with the unseen layers of things both revealed and erased, the markings of history and construction and deconstruction. In some cases, Meritou projects photographs of cities and emphasizes key lines, tracing them onto her canvas. Into this mix, she stirs lines of intuitive motion, creating a new map from the given geography and the wild swaying places of the mind and the hand. The poet Ruth Stone talked about lines of poetry coming through the sky like rushing trains. She'd miss it if she didn't leap and catch it by the tail, run to a sheet of paper to scribble it down. I want to do what Meritou does, grafting multiple dimensions in the lines of text and image. I want to follow Ruth Stone's lead, to listen close enough to hear a line coming. Meritou's landscapes are not rendered places, but rather mapped inquiries. I get the sense that the maps she creates through line are not guides towards understanding a place or finding oneself within one, as traditional maps serve, but rather acts of witnessing as a citizen of the world, unsaid multiple histories. Through each of them, she maintains a bold white space, a blankness that feels ever spacious. The lines she makes create the illusion of elaborate depth. Her white space is a mix of emptiness, erasure, and the leaving out of pieces of the image and story. A painter might gesso over an old canvas to start anew with white. With gesso, the blankness isn't just a new beginning, but also serves as an additional layer, a thin shale of white that always holds the past tracing through. It's similar with erasure, which isn't entirely redactive. We cannot make a line disappear, we can only remove it, and count on the mark it left behind to remain to some degree. We can only change the way in which it is seen now, and how the composition of all the other lines, shapes, colors, and forms interact with that whitened over space, shining through or carrying an unseen but sensed weight. Line 3. See the white wings of this seagull in my blouse, tucked into the new curves of me like a secret. No one knows it's here. No one knows that flight lies dormant in my chest. My heart beats against a bird's heart. When I close my eyes, all I see is that bird's eye, one black dot against the white. I want to color everything with white. When the sky is one big cloud like a quilt, and it isn't raining, and it isn't sunny, and you can hardly feel the air on your skin. When the sky is like that, you can hardly see a white bird wing stretched, going somewhere. It all just blends together. With my eyes unfocused, everything looks softer than it is. I see myself, my body, my shape, without shape. And that is the truth. What I want shapelessness. I want all the color blanched from me, sucked away. Shine a light on me so hard, blinding white, that I disappear. Give me an eraser, I will rub myself away. Let everything white blur into me and everything else drain from me. Let me be a white shell on white sand, a white rabbit in the snow, a white scribble on a blank page. See me and don't see me. I want it both ways at once. Line of skin, line of eyelid, line of eyelash. The line of the collarbone, the side line of rib to waist, lines of the rib slats, lines of the leg, branches, lines of toes, crescents of fingernails, curve of the ear, cleft of chin, lip lines, curved lines of teeth, lines of filament in the iris, layered like particle board, spun into ribbon candy, spirals in a tree trunk, lines of thumbprint, lines felt from touch like lines of echo, the lines of sun spray through the clouds that light your cheekbones, lines of tears, lines of hair. These are the lines of bodies, lines that bind us and free us, lines that link us and separate, lines that define and lines that defend. These lines, they are our edges, the outside that holds us in. They are the rims of the cells of us, the walls that contain us, what makes me, me, and makes you, you. We are just silhouettes in a certain light, moving around, shuffling, exploring, and bumping into each other, navigating a world of lines. How does a body find its way in this world of lines, always moving and disappearing? In Avia Selman's piece, I see the ocean tamed into a frame? How does she tame herself to look so carefully? Her eyes following line after line, unremitting, woven, carrying the weight of water, of movement, of fullness, shift and heave. In a salmon's oceanscape, there is proof that anything can be translated carefully into something else, that everything can be reduced to its lines and understood. The entire ocean and a small swatch of paper and ink. The act of seeing and following, trusting one's perception, a willingness to confront the outsized ungraspable. Beyond the sight lines she follows over and over are the lines from her fingers to tools. Her hands obedient, loyal to the information gleaned from the eye, the line that runs from eyes to brain to hand to pencil across the page. Somehow, the ocean stays a body. This roiling, rolling unit of looseness and tightness, heavier than air, thinner than stone, slippery as silk. There is nothing else like water. It is an everything and nothing environment. Zoom in close, and you will see effervescence. A fine mist of attrition sneaks up from this blue to that blue, rising into the sky. It is breathing, letting go. The droplets will fall back. They cannot resist raining down to the pull of their clan, this gargantuan magnet. The ocean thirsts for the sky, and then it surrenders back down to itself. Hydrophilia, a desire to be in water, to be of it. Selmans drafts lines from our shared reality. We all agree this is what the ocean looks like. She's captured it perfectly, we might say. She's looked so closely. I struggle with my attention straying. My mind gets pulled from looking to dreaming and then buried in what-ifs. These unrealities draft fabricated lines. They make false connections. One line marks the red trail of a plane falling from sky to sea. Another tracks the yellow stripes on asphalt caused by a shadow to a crash. Train tracks that tug on the distance between us, the sudden scribble of an angry tornado, the lines of conversation that loop again and again in my head, these spiraling repetitions I no longer want to harbor. Do these lines belong in this drawing essay too? It appears they are forcing their way into the subtext. These anxiety lines are the ones I want to erase, to rub out the etchings so that only a faint trace remains. It's so hard to do, to willingly erase one's line of thought without drawing and redrawing it over and over. There's a compulsion to use lines to make two places meet, even to connect desire with dread. All these catastrophes I've imagined that never occurred, these storylines I've scripted into scenes watched on the movie screen of my imagination, where loved ones suffer innumerable tragedies, myself included. I felt intensely with a vicarious incandescence the desperation and mourning of 1,000 unrealized predictions. And then I've stopped drawing the seascape. Instead, I'm drawing reverie, bad dreams. I'm getting lost, sinking deeper into the dark and consuming nature of worry, getting tangled in lines. If only I could anchor myself in one particular spot of this ocean and be cleaned, removed of these lines, made placeless, disoriented by the endless black shush. To let myself just submerge in quietude, to feel the enormity of liquid, to disappear into nothingness. Where is this anxiety coming from? Is it a fear of emotional pain? Am I so afraid of loss? Why can I not absorb more loss? I already feel swollen with grief for no simple reason. And I hold this fear that I cannot take any more. I think that what I'm really asking is, can I allow myself to feel all the grief I have pushed aside? Can I let myself sink into it and trust that I will bob to the surface? Is my grief unresolved, I wonder, because I haven't fully dissolved? By imagining losses and deaths, am I unwittingly exposing myself like inoculation theory, as if I'm trying to build up a resistance to handle real loss? Listen, I remind myself, anxiety doesn't prepare us for catastrophe. It just makes us live in our heads and miss out on life, right? Being above the ocean and being below it are entirely unrelated experiences. They are simply bridged by the skin of water. We can't rehearse for grief or loss any more than we can make sense of it. Terrible things happen and have happened, and I'm sorry, but they will keep happening, and the sadness accrues inside of us. What do we do then? I'm trying to puzzle this out. How do we tame and manage our dread, disappointment, and despair so that it doesn't ruin us? I am no longer on land. I'm on a small boat in Via Salmons' ocean, sketching out the lines of my mind, letting them be seen and roam. I am navigating into new ways of thinking. Perhaps I am trying to whet myself to grief so that I can pierce it, or use it as a burin or drawing tool rather than flail in it. I'm assigning it to purpose rather than just letting it be, grow, swell, take over. You see, I don't trust its temporality. I know it can swell and pour, and look, here it is, taking over this piece, smudging out the definition of our lines, saturating the paper, wetting the edges. Let me examine grief, now that I recognize it as this ocean around me. Loss is always a unique experience. It is ubiquitous. We can count on life ending in death. we can count on loss and suffering as painful and generative ingredients in the recipe of living. Accidental deaths of loved ones, sudden and ongoing illnesses, the ends of relationships, the losses of dreams, the losses of belonging, of place, of a sense of self. It is in our ancestry, the facts of violence in our lineage and genocide as it ricochets throughout history. There is the tug of trauma in our fibers, the sorrow of being unwanted, the despair in being despised, the truth of how many of us have been condemned to die from bigotry and imperialist inanity, devoid of the sacred truth that each of us is built of unseen architecture and lit with a small fire inside. There is plenty to grieve. I fear that if I fall apart, I might not be able to reassemble again as whole. My lines might unravel and stay loose, disconnected, unchoreographed from being. Hydrophilia is a body of water, a collection of magnetized droplets, loyal to itself, undivided. Here now is that urge to leap into the ocean, to let the water smooth the grooves from me, sand off my edges with her salty tongue and rolling hands, to let go of these lines that defend and define me. I'm caught in the push and pull of the tide. I think what I'm asking above the fray is, how do I find my agency? And not only find it, but claim it. And not only claim it, but keep it. Maybe the point isn't to map the space I fit in and carve out a place of belonging, but rather in mapping, to take inventory of my body and mind and to keep them swaying and moving in tandem with the lines of my surroundings as we explore and shift. Maybe I'm seeking a process like Selman's has and Meritu has, a way to make sense of something and spin it anew. Let's zoom out for a moment. From the vantage of an airplane, the ocean is no longer defined by this intricate surface tapestry I'm struggling to draw. It loses its lines and becomes only color, just a wash of blue. Above the fray, you get a color field, and that's it. Is it a place or a body? Who could tell? Blue is a landscape. Blue is a being. Blue is a feeling. Change the distance and focus, and you will retreat from line to color and the wash of the undefined. Like Rothko or Frankenthaler, these brushy, soft planes of edgelessness are undefined, indeterminate, shape without lines. I am painting a swath of rich gray blue here and moving on. Line 4. Place me in the studio where I have laid out the apricots and I am waiting for the painter in me to step forward. The first stroke follows the ridges of apricots like soft mountains down to the swoop of the lip of the bowl. The fruits are plump and downy with a soft little cleft that disappears around the bend. Stay with it. Shadow and color and line. Smear and wipe and daub. Brush tip. Fingertip. Step away. Come back. Away. And back. I'm trying too hard. And each time it looks less and less like what I want. Fuck apricots. You are no Cezanne. You are no Gorky. You would have eaten apricots out of Gorky's hand and unfurled for Cezanne like a spring leaf. Paint me, love me. There is no end to your want to be seen. Clatter of brushes and jars, flying canvas, impact, the tinny rattle of the steel cup of turpentine spinning on the floor. One apricot rolls to the corner, will rot under the sink. Green drip marks on the white walls, spill of water, splash of paint. The palette lies dotted with blobs of color, and they are a chorus screaming, "You can't do it." This is the danger zone, the illusionary point where one feels anger and in it the misperception that all is concrete. This is where one is liable to slip, to fall into the lost place with one brash gesture, one spin of fury, and the map is likely to blur, to disintegrate, that it, no matter what it is never enough. Let me slow down here. Let me find my map, half drawn, tool in hand. The feeling of that line of yarn in my palm. Breathe. Perfection is a monster I can choose to feed or not. The exceptional painting in my mind exists in the same attic space as my dreams and anxieties. What exists right here are apricots. If painting the apricots is going to drive me mad, I probably need to grab an apricot, leave the studio, and take a walk, sit on a bench, thumb the soft fuzz, and eat it. Tame my rabid heart. But in the moment, I so often forget. There is this blankness I slip into, which I lose sight of reason, of calm, of looking and listening. Why is it that over and over again I get the sensation that I was following the line of yarn into the forest, and then I awakened to the absence of it in my hands and the inscrutable invisibility of it anywhere in this landscape? I'm delineating the edges of our ocean, the places where water meets sand or air. There is this turbid vacancy of where it is, of the wild darkness and the shush it delivers if we dare to be in it rather than gaze at it. That incomprehensible volume where soft sounds of waves rumble and color and lines waver or else are blotted out. It feels like I'm looking into a blind spot. Return to water, one drop at a time. A bead of water on the back of my hand. If I nudge it toward another bead of water, they merge into a larger droplet. They claim homogeny, braced together, united, reflective, a bubble. Hydrophilia. The water hugs itself. I am living on land and telling myself to prepare to drown. When I have a collection of previous drownings, I'm still fighting and spluttering with, squirreled away in the pail. No wonder I feel lost. No wonder I can't escape the feeling of the ocean strapped to my chest. There is water inside waiting to spill. It is a swelling, a tangle of marks from which I need to just pull one string, one line to follow, and the whole thing collapses like submersion. When I touch the grief and nudge it, a polyvocal emission releases. How can one not be drowning in grief in this world? There is genocide, brutality, oppression, systematic injustice, abuse, and reason for outrage and despair all around us. We live in a country and a world littered with violence, layers of it buried in the slate of the ground we stand on, eruptions of it brewing in every corner. No protection for the powerless, the underserved, the ones without shelter and resources. So many people trapped. The world is dangerous. The systems intended for safety are not. We are gridded with immigration lines, lines of refugees, people displaced and erased, the crises of epidemics, war, lives brutally quenched. How can one not feel condemned to grieve irrevocably when there is no solution? Suffering will not ease. It will only move like wind between us. My anger has thrashed, and this now is sadness. This is sorrow, a soft place, a sodden one. I've been encouraged to clear it out of me, to wail and thrash to release my grief. I can't bring myself to do it. I get itchy and uncomfortable imagining performative grief when I have so often, as a person with depression, wailed at my abject abhorrence, willing it to stop and being unable. Instead, the stoicism, this rigidity inside. I've put up a line, a barrier, a wall. There's a dam holding back the swell.